Rosalie Bennett's hands trembled as she held the cream-colored envelope with its elegant wax seal. The morning light filtered through her tiny apartment window in Boston, illuminating the formal script that had arrived 3 days ago. She had read it dozens of times, yet the words still felt surreal. Dear Miss Bennett, your presence is required at Blackwood Estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, for the reading of a private codicil. This matter concerns your late mother, Ruby Bennett, and cannot be discussed via correspondence. Transportation has been arranged. Rosalie clutched the worn photograph of her mother, taken just months before cancer stole her away 5 years ago. Ruby had been a seamstress, working her fingers raw to put Rosalie through art school. She had never mentioned anyone named Blackwood, never spoke of Connecticut, never hinted at secrets buried in her past. Yet here Rosalie sat, on a train speeding toward answers she wasn't sure she wanted. Arrival at Blackwood Estate. The mansion rose from manicured grounds like something from a Gothic novel. Stone walls climbed 3 stories high, windows gleaming like suspicious eyes. Rosalie's stomach twisted as the car crunched up the gravel driveway. She smoothed her simple navy dress, suddenly aware of how out of place she looked. A stern woman in pearls answered the door, her lips pursed in disapproval. You must be the Bennett girl. I'm Cordelia Winters Blackwood. Do try not to touch anything valuable. Before Rosalie could respond, a young man appeared at the top of the grand staircase. Jasper Blackwood descended with the casual arrogance of someone who had never questioned their place in the world. Tall, sharp-featured, with dark hair and eyes that assessed Rosalie like she was a stain on his expensive carpet. Is this some kind of joke? He asked his stepmother. Why is there a stranger in our home? I was invited, Rosalie said quietly, lifting her chin. For a will reading? Jasper laughed, cold and cutting. A will reading? My grandfather died 8 months ago, and the estate was settled. Whatever scam you're running, you picked the wrong family. Heat flooded Rosalie's cheeks. I'm not running anything. I received a legal summons from Leonard Foster, attorney at law. Maybe you should take it up with him instead of insulting me. Something flickered in Jasper's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that she had pushed back. Leonard is our family lawyer. He wouldn't waste our time with nonsense. And perhaps you should trust his judgment, Rosalie replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The reading Leonard Foster's office smelled of old leather and older money. The lawyer was a thin man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many family secrets. Theodore Blackwood sat at the head of the table, an imposing figure despite his 62 years. His face was carved from granite, revealing nothing. When Theodore's gaze landed on Rosalie, he went absolutely still. The color drained from his face. His hand gripped the armrest so tightly his knuckles turned white. That's impossible, he whispered. Father? Jasper leaned forward. What's wrong? Theodore didn't answer. He couldn't look away from Rosalie's face, her brown eyes, the curve of her smile, the small birthmark near her temple. It was like seeing a ghost. Leonard cleared his throat. Shall we begin? This concerns a private codicil added to the estate of Margaret Blackwood, Theodore's late mother. 1 month before her death, Grandmother never mentioned any codicil, Jasper interrupted. It was sealed until certain conditions were met. Leonard pulled out a document. Specifically, until Miss Rosalie Bennett reached the age of 24 and her mother, Ruby Bennett, was deceased. Both conditions have now been satisfied. Cordelia's perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms. This is absurd. Theodore, tell them this is absurd. But Theodore remained silent, his eyes still locked on Rosalie. Leonard continued. Margaret Blackwood left to Rosalie Bennett her personal painting, Summer's End, by Thomas Wheeler. Valued at approximately $400,000, the room erupted. Jasper shot to his feet. That painting has been in our family for generations. You can't just give it to some random girl. I can if it was Margaret's wish, Leonard said calmly. And it was. She left specific instructions. The painting is to go to Ruby Bennett's daughter, with her deepest apologies for wrongs that cannot be undone. Rosalie's head spun. I don't understand. I never met your grandmother. My mother never mentioned her. Why would she leave me anything? An excellent question. Diana Ashford spoke for the first time. Jasper's fiancée sat beside him, blonde and beautiful and radiating cold hostility. One that suggests this entire situation has been manufactured. Perhaps Miss Bennett's mother filled her head with lies about connections to our family, hoping for exactly this outcome. My mother wasn't a liar, Rosalie said, her voice sharp. Then explain it, Jasper demanded. Explain why my grandmother would leave you a fortune when you claim you never met her.
I can't.
Rosalie stood, her chair scraping back. I don't know. I came here looking for answers, not to steal anything from you. Keep your painting. I don't want anything from people like you. She turned to leave, but Theodore's voice stopped her. Ruby, the single word hung in the air like a confession. Rosalie turned slowly. What did you say? Theodore's mask had cracked. Behind it was something raw and painful. You look exactly like her. Your mother, Ruby. God help me, you're the image of her at your age. Revelations begin. The silence that followed was deafening.
You knew my mother?
Rosalie's voice was barely a whisper. Father, what is she talking about? Jasper demanded. Theodore stood on unsteady legs. Leonard, clear the room. Everyone except Miss Bennett. Absolutely not, Cordelia snapped. Theodore, I don't know what this girl is implying, but out. Now. The command in Theodore's voice brooked no argument. Reluctantly, the others filed out. Jasper threw one last confused, angry look at Rosalie before Diana pulled him away. Only Leonard remained, a silent witness. Theodore moved to the window, his back to Rosalie. 25 years ago, I met your mother. She was working at a gallery in Boston, and I was there for a textile exhibition. She was ... extraordinary, brilliant, kind, full of life. Everything my world wasn't. Rosalie's heart hammered. You had an affair for 6 months? The most alive I'd ever felt. Then she discovered she was pregnant. Theodore's shoulders sagged. I was already married to Jasper's mother, already drowning in family obligations and business expectations. When Ruby told me about the baby, I panicked. I offered her money to disappear, to never contact me again. Tears burned Rosalie's eyes. She refused. She threw the money in my face, told me she would raise the child alone, that we deserved better than a coward. That was the last time I saw her. But my mother, Margaret, somehow found out. She tracked Ruby down, tried to help her. Ruby refused that too. She was too proud to hurt. So your mother left me the painting out of guilt, Rosalie said bitterly. Theodore finally turned to face her. She left it to you because you're my daughter. Because the Blackwood family owed you everything and gave you nothing. The words hung between them like a chasm. You're lying, Rosalie whispered, but she knew he wasn't. All those questions about her father that her mother had never answered, the sadness in Ruby's eyes whenever Rosalie asked, the comfortable poverty they'd lived in despite her mother's obvious intelligence and skill. I have no proof, Theodore said quietly. Ruby made sure of that. But I know. I knew the moment you walked through that door. You have your mother's eyes, but you have my mother's smile. My grandmother's birthmark. The Blackwood family traits that skip generations. Leonard spoke for the first time. Margaret included a letter with the codicil. Miss Bennett, she wanted you to have this. He handed Rosalie an envelope, yellowed with age. With shaking hands, she opened it and began to read the elegant script of a grandmother she had never known. Dear Rosalie, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and your mother as well. I am so deeply sorry. Sorry I couldn't convince Ruby to accept my help. Sorry I couldn't convince my son to be the man he should have been. Sorry you grew up without knowing your family. The painting is yours by right. It was my mother's past to me, and should have gone to my granddaughter. You claim what is yours, child. The Blackwoods owe you more than gold and canvas. They owe you truth. With love and regret, Margaret Blackwood. Rosalie looked up, tears streaming down her face, and saw her reflection in the window behind Theodore. For the first time, she saw the resemblance. The shape of the jaw, the arch of the eyebrows, the stubborn set of the chin. What happens now? She asked. Theodore's expression was unreadable. That depends on you. Rosalie didn't leave Blackwood Estate that day. Against every instinct screaming at her to run, she accepted Leonard's offer to stay in the guest house while they sorted through the legal complexities of her situation. The painting, Summer's End, hung in Theodore's private study, and seeing it felt like looking at a piece of herself she'd never known existed. But staying meant facing the family's wrath. Cordelia made her displeasure known immediately. "You think you can waltz in here and claim a piece of our legacy? Theodore's moment of sentimentality doesn't change anything. You have no proof of paternity, no legal standing." "I don't want your money," Rosalie said quietly. They stood in the morning room, sunlight streaming through crystal windows. "I just want to understand who my mother was, who I am." "You're nobody," Cordelia hissed. "A mistake Theodore made decades ago. Accept your painting and disappear." But Rosalie had inherited her mother's stubbornness. "I'll leave when I'm ready." Unexpected Beatrice Chen had been the Blackwood family housekeeper for 40 years. She was a tiny woman with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She found Rosalie crying in the garden 3 days after the revelation, surrounded by roses that smelled like her mother's perfume. "Miss Ruby loved roses," Beatrice said softly, settling onto the bench beside her. "She visited this estate once, 25 years ago, heavily pregnant. Mrs. Margaret insisted she come. Wanted to meet the woman who'd captured Mr. Theodore's heart." Rosalie looked up, tears still wet on her cheeks. "My mother was here?" "Just for an afternoon. Mr. Theodore was away on business. Mrs. Margaret tried to give her money, help a place to stay. Your mother refused everything. Said she wouldn't take charity from people who treated love like a business transaction." Beatrice smiled sadly. She was magnificent, fierce and proud. "You look just like her. Did she ever talk about him?" "My father, she said he'd made his choice, that she'd made hers. That her daughter would grow up knowing what real love looked like, even if it meant struggling." Beatrice patted Rosalie's hand. "She kept her word. You grew up loved, didn't you?" Rosalie nodded, fresh tears falling. "Every single day." Then she won. "Don't let them make you feel like you're the mistake. You were the best thing Ruby ever did." Jasper's conflict. Jasper avoided Rosalie for a week. When they finally spoke again, it was by accident. She'd wandered into the estate library late at night, unable to sleep, and found him there, whiskey in hand, staring at family photo albums. "You can't sleep either?" he asked without looking up. "Too many thoughts." Rosalie hesitated in the doorway. "I can leave if you want privacy." "No. Stay." He closed the album. "I owe you an apology. I was cruel when you first arrived. I thought you were a con artist. And now I don't know what to think." Jasper ran a hand through his dark hair. "My father never mentioned you. Never hinted that I might have a half-sister somewhere. My whole life feels like a lie." Rosalie moved closer, drawn by the vulnerability in his voice. "I didn't know either. My mother never told me who my father was. She just said he couldn't be in our lives. She was protecting you." Jasper looked at her finally, really looked at her. "From this? The Blackwood family destroys everything it touches. You don't believe that, don't I?" His laugh was bitter. "Look at my engagement. Diana and I have known each other since childhood. Our families arranged this marriage when we were teenagers. It's a business merger dressed up as love. That's what Blackwoods do. We trade and negotiate and never actually feel anything real." The confession hung between them. Rosalie sat down across from him, the massive desk, a barrier, and a bridge. "Then why go through with it?" "Because it's expected. Because disappointing my father is something I've never been able to do." Jasper poured another whiskey. "Until now, apparently. He's been different since you arrived. Softer. Almost human. It's guilty. He should be." Jasper's eyes met hers. "But so am I. I've been complicit in this family's cruelty my whole life. I never questioned it. Never pushed back. And then you walked in, refusing to be intimidated, demanding answers, and I realized how small I've become. Diana's schemes. Diana Ashford was not a woman who accepted defeat gracefully. She watched Jasper's growing fascination with Rosalie with barely concealed fury. At a family dinner 1 week later, she struck. "I've been doing some research," Diana announced, her voice honey-sweet and poisonous. About art fraud, specifically. Did you know that forged provenance documents can make worthless paintings appear valuable? All eyes turned to her. What are you implying? Theodore asked coldly. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Diana smiled at Rosalie. The painting Summer's End was conveniently authenticated 25 years ago by a man who lost his license for falsifying documents, the same year Ruby Bennett supposedly had a relationship with Theodore. Doesn't that seem like quite a coincidence? Rosalie felt her face flush. Are you suggesting my mother forged documents? I'm suggesting someone did. Perhaps Ruby realized she couldn't prove paternity, so she created another avenue for her daughter to claim Blackwood money. A generous inheritance that couldn't be contested. That's enough, Jasper said sharply, but Diana continued, relentless. The painting could be worth $400,000 or $400. We won't know until it's properly authenticated by current experts. I've already contacted several galleries. They're very interested in examining it. Theodore stood abruptly. The painting is not up for debate. My mother left it to Rosalie. That's final, is it? Diana's eyes glittered. Because legally, if the authentication is fraudulent, the entire codicil could be considered void. Obtained through deception? That would make Rosalie's claim to anything Blackwood legally groundless. The words landed like bombs. The hidden letters that night, Beatrice knocked on Rosalie's door. The elderly housekeeper carried a small wooden box, her expression grave. Mrs. Margaret gave me this before she died. Made me promise to give it to Ruby's daughter if she ever came looking for answers. Beatrice set the box on the bed. I think it's time. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, tied with faded ribbon. Rosalie's hands shook as she untied the bundle and began to read. They were correspondence between Margaret Blackwood and Ruby Bennett, spanning 3 years. Ruby had refused money, but she'd accepted friendship. Margaret had been dying of cancer, and Ruby had been struggling as a single mother. They'd written to each other about life, love, mistakes, redemption. One letter made Rosalie's breath catch. Dear Margaret, I cannot accept your generous offer to acknowledge Rosalie legally. Theodore made his choice, and I've made mine. But I want you to know the truth. When Rosalie was born, I had a DNA test done. I kept the results sealed, in case she ever needed proof of her heritage. I've enclosed a copy for you. Theodore is her father, without question. But I don't want her to know him as a man who rejected her. I want her to know him as a man who could have been better. Perhaps one day he will be. Until then, we'll manage on our own. With love and hope, Ruby. Attached to the letter was a yellowed laboratory report. DNA paternity test. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Rosalie clutched the paper to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Her mother had known, had proof, had chosen pride and protection over financial security. She loved you so much, Beatrice whispered. More than money. More than anything. Confrontation the next morning. Rosalie walked into Theodore's study and placed the DNA results on his desk. He stared at them for a long time without speaking. My mother had the proof all along, Rosalie said quietly. She never intended to use it. She didn't want your money or your name. She just wanted me to have a chance at a life you couldn't give me. Theodore's hands trembled as he picked up the paper. She was a better person than I deserved. Yes, she was. Rosalie's voice was steady now, strengthened by her mother's courage. And I'm done letting your family make me feel like I'm the problem. I'm not a mistake. I'm not a con artist. I'm Ruby Bennett's daughter, and that's worth more than being a Blackwood ever could be. She turned to leave, but Theodore's voice stopped her. Wait, please. He stood, and for the first time. Rosalie saw him not as the cold patriarch, but as a man carrying decades of regret. You're right. About everything. I was a coward 25 years ago. I'm trying not to be one now. What does that mean? It means I'm calling my lawyer. I'm having new DNA tests run with proper witnesses. And when they confirm what we both know, I'm publicly acknowledging you as my daughter. With all the legal rights and inheritance that entails. Rosalie stared at him. Why now? Because dying alone with regrets is a coward's fate. And because you deserve what your mother never wanted to take by force, 3 weeks later, Leonard Foster gathered the family in the same conference room where Rosalie's world had first shifted. The DNA results sat in a sealed envelope on the table, official and undeniable. Rosalie's hands were steady now. Strengthened by her mother's memory and her own growing resolve, Theodore sat at the head of the table. Looking older than his 62 years, Jasper was beside him, his expression unreadable. Diana perched on Jasper's other side like a bird of prey, her perfectly manicured nails tapping in impatient rhythm. Cordelia glared at Rosalie with undisguised hatred. "Before we begin," Leonard said carefully, "I want to remind everyone that these results are legally binding and will be filed with the court. Whatever we learn today becomes part of the official record." "Just open it," Cordelia snapped. "Let's end this charade." Leonard broke the seal and read aloud. "DNA analysis confirms with 99.97% certainty that Theodore Blackwood is the biological father of Rosalie Bennett." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Cordelia laughed, sharp and brittle. "Congratulations, Theodore. Your youthful indiscretion is now a legal liability. I hope she was worth destroying this family's reputation." "My mother was worth 100 of you," Rosalie said quietly. Her voice like steel wrapped in silk. Theodore stood slowly, his eyes never leaving Rosalie's face. "Effective immediately, I'm adding Rosalie to my will as a legal heir. She'll receive equal shares with Jasper in the Blackwood Estate and business holdings." "You can't be serious," Diana gasped. "Theodore, think about what you're doing. The scandal alone will tank your stock prices." "I don't care about stock prices." Theodore's voice carried a weight of finality. "I care about doing what I should have done 25 years ago. Rosalie is my daughter. She deserves everything I denied her mother." Jasper had been silent throughout the reading, his face a mask. Now he spoke, his voice hoarse. "Does this mean what I think it means? That we're actually siblings?" "Half-siblings," Rosalie confirmed. She looked at him, this complicated man who'd been cruel and kind in equal measures. "If you want to acknowledge me as family..." Something shifted in Jasper's expression. "I spent my whole life wishing I had a sibling. Someone who understood what it was like to carry the Blackwood name." He smiled, sad and genuine. "I just never imagined it would be you." Cordelia's confession. But Cordelia wasn't finished. She stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the marble floor. "You fools. All of you. Do you really think this girl appeared out of nowhere by coincidence?" "What are you talking about?" Theodore demanded. "I'm talking about the fact that I knew about Ruby Bennett 20 years ago. I'm talking about the fact that I made sure she and her bastard daughter stayed buried in poverty where they belonged." The room went deathly still. Rosalie's voice was barely a whisper. "What did you do?" Cordelia's mask of sophistication cracked, revealing something ugly beneath. "Ruby came to me when you were 4 years old. She was desperate, broke. Her daughter needed medicine. She didn't want money from Theodore. She wanted to borrow from his wife. Can you imagine? The audacity." "She refused," Rosalie said, understanding flooding through her with sickening clarity. "I did better than refuse. I made sure she could never bother us again." Cordelia's smile was venomous. "I had friends in Boston, connected friends. They made sure Ruby couldn't get decent work, couldn't get good housing, couldn't climb out of the hole she dug herself into. Every time she tried to improve her situation, doors closed in her face. And she never knew why." Theodore's face had gone white. "You sabotaged her." "For 20 years. Protected our family," Cordelia spat. "I protected Jasper's inheritance from this interloper. And I'd do it again." The rage that filled Rosalie was cold and clarifying. All those years of her mother working 3 jobs, all those nights Ruby had cried when she thought Rosalie was asleep, all the opportunities denied, the struggles endured, the exhaustion that had weakened her mother's body until cancer found fertile ground. "You killed her," Rosalie said softly. "My mother died at 50 from stress and exhaustion and a body worn down by decades of struggling. You killed her as surely as if you'd poisoned her." "Don't be dramatic," Cordelia scoffed. "I simply maintained appropriate boundaries." Jasper stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. "Get out. Get out of this house right now, excuse me. This is my home. Not anymore. Theodore's voice was ice. Leonard, draft divorce papers immediately. Cordelia will receive the minimum allowed by law. Not a penny more. For the first time, fear flickered across Cordelia's face. You can't do this. I've been your wife for 15 years, and you've spent those 15 years punishing an innocent woman and child for my mistakes. Theodore looked at her like she was a stranger. You're a monster, and you're no longer welcome in this family. Security escorted Cordelia out, her protests echoing through the marble halls. Diana watched the spectacle with calculating eyes. Already adjusting her strategy, Jasper's choice later that evening, Rosalie found Jasper in the garden. Sitting on the stone bench where Beatrice had first told her about Ruby's visit to the estate, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Can I sit? She asked. It's your garden too now, apparently. But he shifted to make room, his tone more resigned than hostile. They sat in silence for a while. Watching the light fade, I broke my engagement, Jasper said finally. Called it off an hour ago. Rosalie turned to him, surprised. Because of the DNA results? Mostly because I realized I've been sleepwalking through my entire life. He looked at her, something raw and honest in his eyes. You walked in here with nothing, knowing no one, and you stood up to all of us. You didn't let us make you feel small. You demanded truth and respect, and somehow you got them. I had nothing to lose, Rosalie said quietly. You have everything to lose. Do I? This house? The money? The business? What's it worth if I'm miserable? Diana doesn't love me. I don't love her. We were going to spend our lives in a gilded prison, and I was too much of a coward to admit it. Jasper smiled sadly. Then you showed me what courage looks like. Not courageous. I'm just stubborn. My mother's daughter. Your mother sounds like she was extraordinary, and she was. Rosalie's throat tightened. She gave up everything to protect me from this world. And now I'm standing right in the middle of it. You don't have to stay, Jasper said. Theodore's acknowledgement means you'll get a substantial inheritance regardless. You could take the money, finish your degree, live your life far away from Blackwood drama. Is that what you want? For me to leave? Jasper was quiet for a long moment. No, selfishly, I want you to stay. I want to know my sister. I want to learn how to be more like her. The word sister settled between them, strange and right all at once. I'll stay, Rosalie decided. Not forever, maybe. But for now, I want to understand where I came from, even if I don't want it to define where I'm going. Theodore's redemption. Theodore found Rosalie later that night in the study, standing before summer's end. A painting glowed in the lamplight. A woman in a garden, at twilight, surrounded by roses. Rosalie had looked at it 100 times now and always saw her mother's face in the painted woman's features. Margaret commissioned that painting the year before she died, Theodore said from the doorway. The artist used photographs of Ruby as his model, though he never met her. My mother's way of keeping her close, I think. Of remembering the woman who could have been her daughter-in-law if I'd been brave enough. She must have been very disappointed in you, Rosalie said, not unkindly. She told me so near the end. Said I'd chosen fear over love, and would regret it for the rest of my life. Theodore moved to stand beside Rosalie. She was right. Why didn't you look for us? After your mother died, after your first wife passed away, why didn't you try to find my mother? Theodore's face creased with pain, cowardice, shame. The longer I waited, the harder it became to imagine facing Ruby after what I'd done. I told myself she was better off without me, that you were better off. He looked at Rosalie. I was wrong about everything, yes, you were. Rosalie turned to face him fully. But my mother wouldn't want me to carry her anger forward. She was bitter about a lot of things, but she taught me that holding on to hate only poisons yourself. She taught you well. She did. Rosalie took a breath. I can't call you father. That word is too big, too complicated. And I can't pretend that money and acknowledgement erased 24 years of absence. I understand. But Rosalie continued, I'm willing to try to know you. The real you, not the patriarch or the titan of industry. Just the man who loved my mother once and has to live with the consequences of losing her. Theodore's eyes glistened with unshed tears. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But it's what I'm offering. He held out his hand. After a moment, Rosalie took it. The handshake was formal, tentative, but it was a beginning epilogue. 1 year later, the art gallery opening was packed with Boston's elite. Rosalie moved through the crowd with easy confidence. Her simple black dress elegant without trying too hard. She'd finished her art restoration degree and was now working at a prestigious museum while completing her certification. The inheritance sat in an investment account, barely touched. She'd learned from her mother that self-worth couldn't be bought. Jasper arrived late, slightly disheveled, grinning. He'd taken a sabbatical from the family business to travel, finding himself in small villages across Europe. He looked happier than Rosalie had ever seen him. "The prodigal son returns," she teased as he hugged her. "Just in time for your big night? Are you nervous?" Terrified, she gestured to the far wall where several restored paintings hung under spotlight. Her work, her expertise, her name on the placard. Theodore arrived last, moving slowly with the help of a cane. The cancer diagnosis had come 6 months ago. Terminal, aggressive, stealing time he'd already wasted. But he was here, and that mattered. "Ruby would be so proud," he said quietly, looking at Rosalie's work. Yes, Rosalie agreed. She would. They stood together, this fractured family learning to be whole. Rosalie knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Grief and forgiveness were messy, complicated things. But she was her mother's daughter, fierce and proud and brave enough to face truth without flinching.